Greetings, nerds. This is SNN Nerd. I'm your host, Sarah Belmont, and with me, as always, is our Mr. Producer, Will Polk. How are you doing tonight, Will?
Doing very well, Sarah. Happy Avengers Endgame Eve.
Yep, I just need this recording to end so I can go get my ticket.
All right, let's get to it. So you can get your ticket, yeah.
Meanwhile, you add like 3 trailers to the discussion points, even though we have like 3 shows to break down. Okay. You're killing me, Will.
Well, we don't have to talk to trailers, or we could just do like a couple, maybe, how about this, 5 minutes for all 3.
Okay, alright. I'm not timing, but I'm totally timing you.
Yeah.
So, See You Yesterday is an upcoming Netflix film. Something about Netflix films that I really like is how they release the trailer and you only have to wait a month for the movie to drop.
Definitely.
Like, that is so... I love that because the mainstream movies, it just, I mean, we get like 6 months worth of teases and it just builds, but it also becomes annoying.
Yeah, it builds and it builds and builds, and either they will tell you the whole story in that trailer or it just, like you said, it gets annoying to the point where it's just like, all right, you've worn me out. I don't feel like I'm going to see this obligation now.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, See You Yesterday is about some kids who travel back in time to change the death of a loved one, and it's just repeating that cycle again and again. And I don't know if they're going to solve the case. I don't know if they're going to learn a valuable lesson that Barry Allen never learns. But this movie goes off of a point that I think I brought up a few weeks ago. I also appreciate how films that I remember watching on TV or in the cinema are now finding a home in Netflix, because this reminds me of a lot of films like I saw as a kid, and it's a very good trailer. I don't know. I think you and Veronica were more sold than I was. And just because I feel like I've seen it before. I've seen a story like this before again and again, so.
Yeah, I think the selling point for me is, one, we've seen this story before, definitely, but I think it's the topic of dealing with police brutality, and I think it's just the topical nature of what's going on as far as the backstory with these kids. Kids of color and being very smart and creating a time machine. And so I think for me, it was other visceral reactions just to see this story where we've seen it before, but where there are people of color that are the protagonists. And so that was one of the things that really sold me on it. And also it's, I guess Stefan, I can't remember his last name. I think he had based this off of a short film that he did before. So, and Netflix picked it up, and Spike Lee is also behind it as well. So it just, when you look at the trailer, it just looks like it's going to be a very solid film, and one that may get a lot of buzz this year.
Yeah, I'm not saying you're wrong for liking it. I figured.
Well, I didn't take it as such, yeah.
Yeah, I figured those points are exactly why you and Veronica lit up my DMs talking about the movie. It's just so funny
Sarah turned it to me as whenever you and Lindsay were talking Game of Thrones last week.
Yeah. Sometimes I feel like with our DMs, especially when we get the guest hosts involved, I walk into a conversation after I get off of work and I'm like, I don't even know where they started. And I don't know why they're including me. I don't need to chime in, but it's weird.
Yeah. I said it to the two of you both. I was like, something as more of a hey, we got to talk about this. That when after it releases, and then Veronica just took it to the next level. But yeah.
Oh man. Speaking of things to the next level, another trailer dropped this week. Gemini Man featuring Will Smith, and it's an Ang Lee film.
Yeah. I just, as I was saying things about obligation, I just felt obligated to put that on here because we try to be topical. Okay, let me say this. The first time I watched the trailer, I was just like, okay, it's Will Smith acting as Will Smith. And it's Will Smith going up against computer generated younger Will Smith.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. The premise seems interesting, yeah, but the second time I watched it, I actually got past my love-hate relationship with Will Smith, and it seems like we've seen this premise before, as well with, basically the story here is an aging hitman is being targeted by his cloned younger self. And so, it was visually it was very well done, but so I'm going to try to keep an open mind about it.
See, I disagree with the visuals. It reminds me of a 90s action film.
Yeah.
Like, from the point of whoever Clive Owen's character is, as soon as he made appearance, I was like, oh my God, this is nostalgia in the bad way. The premise is cool. The fact that they're doing this spin on the use of Gemini and what that sign means is very good, and I like all of that. It's weird. I don't know. I'm just being optimistic, but I actually really cringed at a lot of the visuals. I don't know why. I also couldn't really tell a difference between the young Will Smith and the old one. I thought they both looked old.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
It's like Will Smith and Paul Rudd. They've made the deal with the Fountain of Youth. But the first time I watched the trailer, I couldn't tell. But the second time I watched it again today when I was putting this in the show notes for tonight. And again, I think that was where I got over my love-hate relationship with Will Smith, and I might go see this.
And the final trailer that got dropped was for Swamp Thing, just a tease, at least the one that I saw. And I think it's more interesting not that they dropped the trailer, but that they closed production.
Yeah, it's this damage control. And we could spend a lot of time, but I won't, on all the crazy theories that just happened after word got out that they were shutting down production. It looks like it was more creative differences, but I know a lot of people are concerned about the DC app and what does that mean for the larger streaming service. But that's a conversation for another day. But the Swamp Thing trailer, one thing it made it clear, this is going to be a very gritty show, and it looks like a horror themed show, and it might be a good thing that production was cut short. It gives them an opportunity to have a very tight story and not fall into the filler trap. And it premieres May 31st, so people can let us know what they think about the trailer. Or if they do watch the show, let us know if you would like for us to recap it.
Yeah, definitely. I second that, because sometimes I can't take Will's word for these things. I have to take other people's words. All right, so we are not talking Cloak and Dagger, even though they had a really good episode. I do remember what happened. Doom Patrol was painful this week, for me at least. But we are going back to the Arrowverse, and I don't know about you, Will, but this actually felt like work to me.
I actually had a different feel this week. I actually enjoyed all 3 episodes.
Well, because you're a DC fanboy, it does not surprise me.
Yeah.
All right, let's start with Supergirl. She's public enemy number 1. The president has taken over. We have a director, Lockwood, who's entering the DEO now and kind of going back going to bat with Alex. And this is kind of just, Lex didn't really appear in this episode, but he still is pulling a lot of strings. And that's about it.
Well, they were returning from hiatus, and at least this episode was one that, for a show that was coming back from hiatus, it did a good job of resetting the story. And also, unlike the other shows where it was just sort of like, I felt like this episode was really moving things forward. Yes, it reminded us of what happened prior to the hiatus, which is Red Supergirl.
Well, Red Supergirl works for me.
Yeah.
Very simple.
Yeah. But basically had this, massive assault on the White House, and the president declares Republican at number one. It sets up the balance of the rest of the season very well. And the things that I think stood out for me in this episode was Colonel Haley, and her finally, began to question her orders and question why she's doing things. And it was I think the way they did it was a very solid and a very organic way of showing that that her actions have had consequences, and it actually ended up being very personal consequences, in that her daughter's teacher was missing from class because they have gone underground because of all the actions that Lockwood and Lex and the DEO and the president has been doing as far as with repealing the Alien Amnesty Act. And it was a good moral dimension and ethical dimension that she was having to explore, as far as like, okay, here is the consequences of my actions, and because I was just too busy following orders, and these underlying orders were probably immoral, now I'm having to deal with the consequences of them at home. And so when Alex and Lockwood attempts to come into the DO and try to have the Supergirl busting weapons and all that kind of stuff, it was good that, okay, she's pivoting now to see what this actually means and how her actions have impacted others.
Yeah, the Alex stuff works. I don't know why I'm struggling right now, because I understand what you were talking about, and I'm just trying to figure out what I want my point to be. I'm sorry.
It's okay. I mean, we've gone from human trafficking and very deep stuff with Cloak and Dagger back to.
I knew she was gonna hit the button twice.
Yeah.
I didn't think it was that shocking of a revelation. The thing that I thought really did work in that moment was the actress's performance of realizing that for Alex, it's really simple to see that moral obligation and know what the right thing is to do. But for Colonel Healy, like, you felt like her whole perspective has changed, and that hurt her really bad, because it's just so altering to suddenly go against the code that you've lived your entire life on. Yeah, I think at the end of the day, that's what really stuck out to me in terms of watching these Arrowverse shows. They're running around in their super suits. They're making foolish decisions. And it's just bad guy of the week type deal, which, taking a break and watching shows like Cloak and Dagger and Doom Patrol, I kind of was like, ooh, this is jarring.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it is like, I remember reading something that this is, these shows are like middle brow, and I guess there are some levels to the genre, and I get why you're struggling, but to me, what's strong about Supergirl this season is, whereas I feel Flash and Arrow are just basically mirrors of each other. It's just plug in different name, family member, etc. I feel that Supergirl has really stood out this season because it's telling an original story as far as this universe, and I don't feel like when I'm watching it, I could easily just plug in Barry for Oliver, etc. It's really, and we've touched on this earlier in the year, and it's carried through out overall really well. In that and I know for some viewers it works and for some viewers it doesn't, but it's actually, I think, taking real world issues, things from the headlines, and plugging them into this Earth 38 construct gives the show a little bit more of a heft to me this season than some of the things that we've seen in the other shows in the Arrowverse. And so that's why it didn't feel like work watching this. I was actually pretty engaged with some of the things that were going on in this episode.
Right. I agree that Supergirl is probably the strongest show out of the three right now. I think why this particular episode was hard for me is because it's very expositional based. Mm-hmm. They're doing a lot of setup. They're making sure all of the pieces are in place because we're getting down to the final episodes. We're getting down to the closure and the epilogue. So, and for me, I think because I figured out that that's what this episode was about, I was just like, okay, I know what's going to happen. Send me next week's episode because I'm ready for it. I've been ready for it. And that's really where I struggled with, because even I think the stuff they're doing with James is a missed opportunity personally, because I really liked the idea that he was going to struggle with PTSD following the shooting, because that's something I wouldn't have expected.
Right.
Yet now they're doing the whole power twist on it, and I'm kind of like, I don't know if I like this. I don't know. I mean, he's Guardian. He's supposed to be the human. These shows, especially Flash and Supergirl, require a human character be a hero. Yeah. So it's just about, it was too expositional based, and I just really wanted to get to next week.
That's a fair point about the exposition. I don't think it took away from it from me, and I agree with you about James's journey right now. It was a missed opportunity when he started having the black veins and the injections that Lena had put into him to help him recover from the gunshot. But I guess in its own way, it was just their way of showing the trauma from the assault, but also thinking back to some of the episodes that led up to him going to agreeing with the sister to go to counseling, he was very resistant, and so it was good that they had him be resistant, because many times people are, whenever they are dealing with stuff, are resistant to going to get help. And so it was a very human reaction to be like, I got this. But then he realized that, no, I don't. So so I think it was good that they showed it's okay even for someone like Guardian, who is, as you said, the normal human in the show, to go through these levels of first denial and then finally acceptance that I do need help to get through this situation. Something that Kara, quite frankly, could use.
Kara just needs a perspective adjustment. She really doesn't understand things. I appreciate the elements where they were talking about how Supergirl is above the law, bull in a china shop, and maybe that's something also that's getting a bit on my nerve, because we've been saying that since the very beginning of this season, that Kara needs to come back down to reality and realize there are consequences. And that's why the Ben Lockwood character works so well, is because, yes, he is the big bad, but when you think about what he's saying, why he did go down that path, it makes complete logical sense considering what happened to his family, all consequences of having aliens on the Earth. And so it just makes sense. And I like how she tried to approach it from a Supergirl perspective to get information about Lex, but that didn't work. And what really did work was Kara being a journalist. Now, I have my degree in journalism, so maybe this is just pushing buttons too, but I really need them to, squash the whole, the pen is mightier than the sword. I don't think it really works that way. And I honestly don't, because I know that there's a lot of bias when you write anything you write, and that's really what I need Kara to start doing. She needs to understand her privilege and understand that she has a significant bias to any story she writes about aliens.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a very good point that expands upon some of the things that we talked about with this season's problems with Supergirl, the person, and Kara not getting that through to Supergirl whenever she is out saving the day. But James also was championing the pen is mightier than the sword message. And, so that, I think again, they have tried to show how utilizing the journalism, telling these people's stories, telling the alien stories, trying to understand with the general populace. These people have, these individuals have lives and are integrated in our society, their society. So I think they've touched on some of those, and it was good to see them flip it to realize for Kara to at least put the journalism mode on and was more effective in getting information about Lex. And having that inmate, open up to her, because he's read her stuff. And, even though there may be a bias in her writing towards, one perspective, those stories still need to be told.
Right. And I think remember one of Ben Lockwood's points was there's nothing about how there's no insurance for when an alien decides to use your house as a battleground. People are losing jobs and the effects on that other side. And I think that's part of the problem that they're trying to escalate this conversation to, is that they're not saying that alien stories don't need to be told. But what about the stories of the humans? Just because aliens are around doesn't mean humans suddenly don't exist either.
Yeah, good point.
And Kara's privilege also comes from she can go back and forth.
Yeah.
Not all aliens can do that.
True. Kara privilege.
and she hasn't written a story about that.
That's a good point. Yeah.
So and that's where I second guess her, that I really still see there's only certain stories being told, and that's not equal opportunity.
That's a good point. That's a very good point.
But then again, they deputized the Children of Liberty, which, by the way, people, what is with all the deputization this year? Like, Jesus, you wear a mask, deputy.
Deputy, yep. Yeah.
Speaking of deputies, do we want to head over to Star City?
Yeah, let's head over to Earth One and check out Star City.
Let me just get my soapbox. Okay. I am so tired of Arrow right now because this is not Arrow. This is really not Arrow anymore. We have entered a backdoor pilot for Black Star that will last the next few episodes of this season and the final 10. Like, this is driving me crazy. I really wish they hadn't gone through the flash forward route, because ever since the flash forward started to click in, I have every week liked the show less and less and less, because it's just, we know what's going to happen, and it's going to take us 12 episodes that are meaningless to get there, and I'm really annoyed.
I feel your pain, my friend. I feel your pain. For someone who is not as invested in Arrow as you have been from day one, I get what you're saying. I see the potentials for a backdoor pilot, but I don't know. I guess at some point, maybe in 2020 or 2021, they would drop this show. Cause right now the CW slate's pretty full, especially when they gotta, have to slate in Batwoman, unless they cancel the Flash or Legends or somebody else. So, which is possible. I guess we'll learn more in the upfronts, but getting back in universe, this episode, I actually liked it because it explored Diggle. And yes, it took 7 years for
you want to explore Diggle. You said that really weird.
Yeah. I know that came out weird. I'm sorry. His backstory, I guess. But what we really have, I mean, we've heard various things, but we actually learned a lot more about his father and his stepfather. And so it was, after, we kind of joked a little bit last week, during one of our recordings about the missed opportunities with the Birds of Prey episode. This one, and maybe it was just because it was just what I thought was this very good acting between, Ernie Hudson and David Ramsey, but I really enjoyed the episode.
I mean, Diggle hasn't had an episode in a while, so I'm glad he gets an episode. And his stuff with his stepdad was pretty decent. It's all the flash forward stuff that is driving me crazy, because I'm sorry, Will. It's not that there's a potential. It's that this is now becoming Black Star. Like, there's just, Oliver Queen is so insignificant in everything he does right now, because we know he's going to die.
You sound like the Flash. Yeah. You sound like a lot of the Flash fans right now who feel that Barry has basically become second fiddle in his own show.
Yeah, well, I mean, we'll get there. But this is just, I think, significantly worse, because we know the last season is next season, and we're being told what happens 20 years from now or 25 years from now, and it doesn't look like it's going to end well for Oliver Queen or Felicity Smoke, and it's just bothering me. But speaking about John Diggle, we learn about how there is a Deathstroke gang in territory. Mm-hmm. And JJ, John Jr., is leader of said gang. And so, again, we have to blame Barry, because Sarah Diggle would never go against her father's wishes. So, damn it, Barry.
I always blame Barry. It's easy to, but in this it could have ended up with Sarah possibly leading the Deathstroke gang. It
Nope.
could have.
Nope. Not in this future. I don't know anymore. So there's that. Got a lot of Felicity Smoke about it, but I swear they killed off Felicity Smoke a long time ago because I'm really not recognizing this character anymore. And Amiko kills Dante, and I think the biggest mistake they've made this season is really doing this whole Amiko ninth circle storyline, because this season, those first 10 episodes were solid.
Yeah.
Like some of the best Arrow writing ever. I don't know if they got a new writing team all of a sudden. I don't know if people just got lazy, but this is just not good storytelling anymore because I'm so checked out. All the stakes are gone. I don't know why I'm watching this other than you want to talk about it. No, now I'm just getting ranty, but yeah. So tell me, Will, what else did I miss about this?
Well, there's the obvious type callback to Elseworlds with Earth 90 Barry calling Diggle, where's your ring, John? So there's that. But as far as fun little fact Easter eggs from this season, but I would agree with you that I feel that the 7B has meandered quite a bit, and the flash forwards can work. If I felt like the flash forwards this episode worked okay as long as they're very tight, and there's only like this episode they only focused on Mia and Connor, so it was good in that regard that it was a very tight focused with the Deathstroke gang and that kind of thing. But you're right about Felicity. There were points during this episode that I was actually kind of annoyed with her. And it was just, I understand what they're trying to do, and especially, I wonder, let me put it to it this way. I wonder if Emily Bett had not made her announcement about leaving the show, would we still be seeing the obvious story arc here that is basically putting her on a shelf so she can have Mia and go into hiding for those years? Because again, because of knowing the out of universe stuff when you're watching the show now, it just feels like everything is just being written to just tie up those loose ends. And so it has taken a lot of the juice out of the season.
Right. And I think that's exactly what they're doing. Amiko's going to do something, or the Ninth Circle is where Oliver and Felicity realize how much danger they are putting their child in, having her still be around. I mean, there's a reason why they're not telling anybody. I mean, granted, you're not supposed to until the second trimester, but
right.
There's going to be a reality check, and all of the stuff with Elena, I'm just like, yeah, saw that coming. Yeah, I figured.
Yeah.
It's just stupid mistakes of you guys haven't been on this show for 7 years. Don't you know how this works? You're going to get betrayed.
Yeah. And I wish they had kept Dante around, because I don't feel Amiko at this point Dante was just more interesting, at least how he got set up in 7A, seemed to be a more intriguing villain than Emiko. I mean, she's and granted, we still have a few episodes left, so maybe I'll be proven wrong here. Physically, she can do the job, but I just don't feel the motive. I guess I'm not being sold on the motivations of wanting to take over the Ninth Circle, and her killing Dante after she found out about what happened. It just seemed very forced and very, again, paint by the numbers. And so it was just a missed opportunity with a very interesting villain, and that they could have kept him around for a little bit longer.
I agree. I mean, I understand why they did the swap out. Dante did get a big build up only to be wasted, and be this bridge between Ricardo and Emiko. And with Emiko, what they really want to do is recenter the show around Oliver, because she is his half sister, and because this show started with him wanting to not only get redemption for himself, but for his father, for his city. And because of what his father did to her, it that burden is being lifted again, even though it's not his fault. And he's just playing a martyr. So I understand what they're going for. It's just not working, because, Arrowverse Arrow, we've seen it. It was called season 1. And it's just, we're just losing momentum because we already see the finish line.
Yeah.
And in a show, you don't want to know what that finish line. I mean, it went downhill the moment we saw, even though it was the best crossover we've ever had. It's great. Looking back on it, I wish that crossover never would have happened, because I don't know if what we're seeing now on this show or Flash would be happening.
True. Yeah. I can't argue with that. I still hold out hope that we're all wrong and somehow Oliver does survive the crisis. But if the flash forwards are the future, and I think Beth has said that they are indeed the future, then we know the finish line, and they've got to, hopefully the remaining episodes of this season ends strong, and we get set up for more than just a backdoor pilot for a future Black Star episode.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, I'm glad you're optimistic. I'm kind of just pessimistic.
Yeah.
Speaking about the finish line, let's talk about Flash season 5.
Yep. We haven't talked about Flash in a while. Feels like
I know.
Yeah.
It's weird. I would like to dub this episode Deja Vu. We got a lot of characters doing some things, and I got a lot of complaints, and I'm not really sure where to start, so I'm just gonna throw this out here. We've always commented on it. When are they gonna do something different, and I mean truly different, with Harry or HR or Sherlock, whatever you want to call this character that Tom Cavanaugh plays, because he spent the entire episode doing what everyone who came before him does, where they figure, hey, I've completed my mission, and so I'm going to leave, but now I realize that the Flash is my family. We've seen that at least 3 times.
Yes, we have.
It bothered me so much. But what really bothered me was, at no point in this episode did anybody ask themselves, what does Thawne want with with Nora. Like, I understand there's a conversation at the end where Iris is like, no, he cares for her. Yeah. But he's still a villain. He still has a plan. He's literally looking at the minutes ticking away of his life. You really don't think he's trying to use her for something?
Oh, it's just his next way of getting a Barry. I mean, what better thing to do is to, like, rip out your arch enemy's heart by having his daughter betray him.
Yeah. Well, and something Barry also didn't say is that, okay, yeah, maybe you don't care that he killed my mom, but he also trained me, manipulated Team Flash to, during that first season arc. It was pure manipulation for selfish values. That's really what Nora got herself into right now is he's seeing his daughter make his same exact mistakes, trusting the wrong person. Getting the wrong advice or the right advice, but from the wrong person.
Beautiful. You dropped the mic.
However,
yeah,
I mean, the acting between both Candace and Grant during that first scene was perfect.
Perfect. Yeah. That definitely was one of some of the most realistic relationship scenes between them, and it touched on. I mean, they were like throwing haymakers at each other, verbal haymakers. I mean, Flashpoint, you name it, and Iris and Barry, the West Island is held up as the gold standard. Well, even the gold standard has their moments, and that acting and that scene was very intense, and I felt set the right tone for the episode as far as just the gravity and really getting to one of, as you said before, deja vu, Barry's problems.
And Iris is absolutely right. He does not account for her feelings, her perspective. He makes snap judgments, and because he is so convinced he's right.
And after 5 years, we would think he would have grown and learned from that, but he still falls into that same mistake. We thought that after Flashpoint he wouldn't do it again. He did, and Iris was so right. I mean, after all the counseling and everything like that, at the end of the day, Barry Allen has a blind spot, and that blind spot is his ego.
Mm-hmm. Now, speaking of blind spots, there's another glaring flaw that both of them, not just Barry, is making, but actually, to a degree, Iris made big time this episode. At what point did they all decide that it was okay for Nora to remain in 2019 indefinitely?
Yeah, well, exactly.
Was there ever a discussion held in that family of like, hey, you're from the future, you technically don't belong nor should be here, but we recognize that you are our daughter, so we're gonna help you. She can go home at any time, guys.
Yeah.
And
Barry can take her home at any time. Yeah.
Right. And so this whole time, Iris is like, she doesn't belong there. And I'm like, technically she does. Well, I understand you didn't get your goodbye, but you also just can't take her back. I mean, what? Didn't we learn anything from season 4 or season 3?
Or season 2 and season 3. Yeah. I mean, yeah. Well, the timeline is malleable, so I mean, I guess, but I mean, that's been one of the flaws of this season, which is, and it flies into face of all the things they built up about not messing with the timeline and is keeping someone from the future willingly in the past where they could alter future events, which it looks like it very well has happened and will happen. with the obvious one being Cicada.
See, this is something else that really threw me, and where I'm seeing some of the weaknesses of these shows, and I say these shows because they all commit these crimes. The Cicada stuff completely forgot about for me until she reappeared, and I'm like, oh, so this is a Cicada-based episode. No, it's a Caitlin-based episode. No, it's Nora. So suddenly, as a viewer, you're watching a season-long show knowing there's all of these different plot threads, yet in one episode they try to cram in three of them, very critical plot threads, thinking they're just going to give some information and other parts are going to have more screen time, but it doesn't work well because it feels shoehorned in. It doesn't feel organic. It feels like, hey, we need things to do with these characters, so we're just going to bring back Cicada. We're just going to bring back Ice Cold Man, which is the biggest joke of all time because that costume is horrendous.
Yeah.
Oh my God. And Cisco, we're just gonna, like, did I hear right? Is he on another Earth for some reason? I don't get it.
Yeah, he was on another Earth this episode because we had to bring in Ralph to go with Iris to 2049. So we'll just send Cisco to another Earth this week. Yeah. So, basically, what happened.
Yeah, just send another person send Barry to another Earth next week for all I care, because. And this is where we were talking last week, Tyrone and Tandy. You got two central characters, but who are on their separate paths, but they're able to organically intertwine those two paths, one central story thread to tug them both forward and along. And that's what these writers are not doing in these shows. They're not being truly masterful about how they interconnect these things. It's much more, we need to fill time, space, and really just screen time. And sometimes we can't do it. So this is a fluff episode. It's kind of that episode that nobody's going to look back and be like, remember when? No.
No. Well, yeah.
But I'm just being mean at this point.
Maybe just a little bit, but no. But I get but you do have it's a very fair point that, sometimes it's, okay, if you're going to do an A-B story, don't throw in a C, because it was very forced to have Cicada just show up right at the moment where we are, where Dr. Tannhauser is stuck in the ice box with the icicle, and there was just a lot going on there in that moment with Caitlin's family, and then you throw oh yeah, by the way, don't forget we still have Cicada, and I was just like, no, I mean where
because I did forget and I don't care.
Yeah, because actually as I was watching the episode, I was the moments between Thawne and Nora and Iris were just so good and so powerful, and I was just I was just even thought, they should have, the story of this season was not forcing this Cicada, this weak villain Cicada, as that they could have dispatched weeks ago. The true story that they missed out on was how Thawne had manipulated Nora, and yes, it does ring the parallels between this and the first season, and I even commented with someone on Twitter. I think one of the reasons why Godspeed worked for a lot of people last week was it was all those, you got those vibes from season one with all the callbacks that they did, and even with this episode this week, I just felt that I wish they had Nora embrace the negative Speed Force, which, hat tip to the comic book. That's something that has been introduced recently into Flash Mythos with Thawne. That's what I wish they had focused more on that this season, because there was just so many ways they could have gone there. and had this play out instead of just a very hurried finish to the season. And we saw that happen last season with season 4 with DeVoe. Is we had all these filler episodes in the middle of the season that just meandered on and on and on, and just felt like it was just like unremarkable villain after the next, just so that we can get to the Enlightenment. And then once we finally did bring original DeVoe back, the villain had lost all his fangs. Mm-hmm. And so if I had the CW sat me down and said, what's the one thing we can do to improve the Arrowverse shows, what would it be? And my suggestion to them would be to cut it to 15 episodes.
I would go for 13.
Or 13. Somewhere, but 13 to 15 episodes. Have a nice, solid, tight season where you don't have all these, where you lose momentum for various reasons, either scheduling or filler episodes, or you do, and it just waters down the product. And I'm hopeful that the other thing is, I would hope that, well, and it won't happen with Flash and Arrow because Arrow's ending, but these shows don't have to mirror one another. They can have their own standalone arcs and things so that I don't feel like just plug in one character in with another. I know I said that earlier tonight, but that was the other thing that was really stuck with me with this season. But I mean, I did enjoy this episode. I really did. And it has some very solid moments, especially, but like you said, with Barry and Iris, the fan service as far as Thawne's new powers, or explaining how, he can manipulate, he created a negative speed force. So that's why, it makes sense now why Barry couldn't feel any shifts and why he couldn't find Thawne. Yeah.
So, I think that's that on Flash, because I got to a very mean, dark, snarky place. So I'm going to leave it on more of an uplifting note. I encourage listeners to go and check out the new CW show, In the Dark. It is about a blind girl in New York City, 25. So it's not about how she suddenly becomes blind. No, she's been blind for a while. She has a lot of issues, and I've started watching it, and I like it. So far, I like the mystery that they've set up. They are not, they don't shy away from the true hardships that people without their sight probably face on a daily basis. And that you get to quote unquote see that through the perspective of a woman who's 25. So, and there's some gang stuff involved, and there's just some self-hatred stuff. So, I would encourage people who want something different to go and check out that show.
Cool. Good recommendation. I've been meaning to ask you, so.
Yeah. I don't know if it's up your alley. Well.
No, I didn't think it would be, but, I was just wondering how you've been enjoying it, so.
But I like it. I'm sure, Tasha would like it, Polly probably, Carrie, Veronica, anybody who likes Good Girls, which is suddenly becoming so much more dominant on my Twitter feed, which is hilarious. But I really do want to go get my Avengers tickets, so I'm going to wrap it up on that note. Will, why don't you tell our listeners where they can find you?
Yes, you can find me at Will M. Polk. That's WILLMPOLK. Enjoy Endgame.
And you can find me at SJ Belmont, SJBELMONT. Please follow our crew on Twitter at CNN Nerd. Friend us on Facebook. Follow us on Instagram. But most importantly, rate, subscribe, and comment on iTunes, SoundCloud, YouTube, and Spotify. Good night, Geek Out. You're welcome.